Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final episode of Madship for Return to the Realm. I'm Kayiu here with Alex and Leah, as always, and yeah, we've finally reached the end of this book. I think that my personal philosophy is that the second books in Robin Hobb's trilogies are always the best, and I think that Madship is continuing to prove me right. So many impactful character and plot moments, and like if there's only one thing in this book, which is Malta's development, I think it would have been amazing. But there's like 12 different character threads to follow. So yeah, before we get into it, if you somehow don't know yet, we are a Spoilers All podcast. We're going to have spoilers not just for the end of this book, not just for potentially the next book in the trilogy, but all 16 books in the Realm of the Elderlings cycle. So don't spoil yourself. But yeah, this section is basically one long, almost like one long scene, and then Brashen and Paragon interrupt in the middle to be like, "Hey guys, we're building up tension by having an interlude."
We're still here.
Yeah, but otherwise, it's one long sequence where Malta and Selden, who are now in the Rain Wilds, are sort of feeling pinched and out of options, and as a last-ditch effort to save Bingtown and Rain, try to release Tintaglia, and that sets off this crazy chain of events, which does eventually save Tintaglia, but also sets into motion lots of issues for the Rain Wilds, which will set the foundation for things that happen in Ship of Destiny. But yeah. I think that because of it being like one long scene, we're going to be even more flexible than we usually are about jumping around. But for our usual structure's sake, let's start off with chapter 35, Tree Hog. Malta, we basically like have a Malta point of view where she's in the Rainwild and she is rightfully so super depressed about the fact that Bingtown and home as she knows it is gone. She's sort of just completely listless and not sure what she can do next. But despite all of that, she manages to reconcile with Rain and find some solace in that.
Reyn&Malta, this was like the first chapter where I started to be like, oh, they're cute.
Yeah. I think we're also seeing Malta like growing away from her father, which I'm very much enjoying. And like we saw a little snippet of it too at the like summer ball or whatever it's called, where she was like fighting with Rain. And she's like, oh, this is exactly what my father does to my mom. And here she kind of has the same thing where she's like, in one shattering instant, her basic concept of men was reordered. She didn't have to hammer Rain with words or break him with unflinching accusations. He could admit he was wrong. And then I think right after that, it was like, unlike her father. And she's like, but I'm not going to think about that right now.
Yep. She's starting to see the chinks in the armor.
Okay, and then right after this we had some technical difficulties. And by we, I mean me. I disconnected. But it's fine, because I was back soon. So, if there's a bit of a jump in topic, now you know why. Getting back into the podcast.
Oof, one of these dogs just farted and it is bad.
Oh, God.
It's like really
Cool, that's really the note I love coming back on. The first thing I hear after it unbreaks is just, damn. This place stinks.
You know, it happens. I'm sure it smells better than the dragon coming out of her cocoon.
Oh yeah, all the like hot lizard smells they describe are so
My favorite is Selden's, where he's like, it's like after you touch, like it's like after you like play with the garters. Yeah. Which like specifically because that raises the question of like, are you playing with snakes a lot? Like, once again, no one is looking after Selden.
No, he's
Yeah,
just
I feel so bad for him.
snakes.
Malta even realized in this chapter, she's like, he had recovered so swiftly, more than recovered. He'd suddenly become a person. I'm like, oh yeah, because he's actually doing stuff on the page
It's
and
like
wailing all the time.
that feels like a fourth wall wink, where it's like he suddenly became a person.
Yeah.
It is now convenient for him to be a character.
Yeah.
But also, I definitely have had like baby cousins where it's like I see them once a year, and it's like, oh, you're such a cute kid, and then they're like, fuck you. Not actually that, but like
Yeah.
because they're kids. But like it
It
has the
feels
same amount of
so
whiplash, where it's like how you're articulate, you can speak
Yeah.
now,
They
you
have like
care
their own
about things.
thoughts and feelings and stuff. Like it's so weird when it's like they do have a switch where they are not a person for a long time and then they just become one and you're like, what the heck? Like
Mhm.
you're reading
Authorize
full-length
this.
novels, like you've got a typewriter you carry around with you. You're like a little old man.
It's like once my friends started, my siblings started having like friends or people they talked about that I didn't know. I was like, I raised you. How dare you meet people that I don't know? Like you have your own little life now.
You can't do that. You're
You
not
haven't
allowed.
let me vet them? Come on now. But yeah, I love like Malta is definitely like down in the dumps in this chapter, but when she's thinking about Selden, she's like she almost felt sentimental about her annoying little brother. She wondered if that meant she were growing up too. And it's like, yes, Malta, you are growing up. I like she's sort of like too depressed to like think about it in a non-cynical way, but she genuinely is growing, and I love that for her.
Yeah. It's nice to see her branching off and having different thoughts and opinions from both of her parents. Like she's starting to form her own ideas. And that's when you really know you're like becoming your own person and like really growing up when you can realize kind of the flaws in your like elders and parents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's like the section where she's talking about like the relationship between her and Reyn, and she's saying like it doesn't have to be about who was wrong or right or who controlled whom, and like given the context, it's obviously like her perception of what relationships has to be is because of how Kefria and Kyle interact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And then
because she didn't really, I mean, yeah, she didn't really have like Ronica and Efren because Efren was always gone. So it's not like she had any other adult relationship role models besides her parents.
Mhm. And I think it's also like I feel like Efren and Ronica, like for good or for bad, if they had like disagreements, they would do it behind closed doors. Whereas like Kyle and Kefria like sort of even we saw them using Malta as like sort of a bargaining chip or like a just
She was
like
a
a
little
piece
in
in
that
their
fight.
conflict.
Yeah. I loved seeing like Reyn and Malta together and having him like the fact that he was comfortable enough around her and so emotional about her to like cry in front of her at the thought that like he could have caused her serious harm. Like it just touched my heart and I'm so excited to see them like become more together. I just love it so much. I'm ready.
Reyn is like a hopeless romantic. Like I love
Oh,
it.
for
Like
sure.
later on in the section, he's like, "Now that Malta was dead, he had no more will to live," and it's like,
Yeah. He's like he's gonna lay down in the mud and then just let it suck him up. Like
no,
he's
like
done.
actually though.
He would
Yeah.
have like a little scrap of Malta's hair, like a little braid that she gave him, and he would just die with it. Like
I feel
that's
like
his
it drags her brother into it too. Like
Yeah.
it's so annoying to me that he brings Selden with him when he basically knows that he's gonna go down there and like look for Malta and die. It's like leave the little boy, like send him back to his mom.
Well, he doesn't know that they're gonna die at first. I think it is just sort of like
he probably would have sent Selden back if he knew like how much damage had already been done in the like room.
Yeah, I guess. I guess I will accept that.
Also, Selden is becoming his own person, like we'd mentioned, so he is allowed to make his own decisions, and he does make his own decision because
if he wants to die, he should be allowed to.
yes, in chapter 37, he makes the decision himself. He's like, it's talking about like how Reyn was like trying to say something like we have to continue and like we have to save her because it might be too late, but like he didn't want to say that in front of Selden. And it's like Selden's like, because she might be dead before you got back to her. He sighed heavily. That's the same reason I didn't go back out and look for help when I knew the way out. I was afraid it would be too late. So like he kind of is grown enough now to know that there are some situations where he like could lose his sister and has to just power through because the amount of time that would be between like him going to help or him getting help could be like life or death actually.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not just Reyn dragging Selden in. Selden made the decision himself, sort of. He was also scared of the dark, and Reyn had a candle, or he had something that lit up. So, like, that made Selden feel better, too.
Yeah, I think it would be best if he, like... Because like, also, like, what was Reyn supposed to do? Just, like, leave him on... Like, be like, okay, kid, nice.
Yeah, follow the chalk track.
Yeah, I think that him being there as, like, a protector was, like, good. Though, obviously, like... Not ideal, but I don't know that there's any ideal situation.
For sure. I, for some reason, thought that, like, the second Selden saw Tintaglia, he was going to become, like, her bard or whatever. And I was, like, expecting him to, like, break out in song and be like, oh my god, she's magnificent. But he's like, oh, she smells really bad. And she's, like, going to crush us. I was not expecting that, just based on like the Selden I know in the future.
I thought that was going to happen too. I was expecting him to get like enchanted by her at once.
Yeah.
I thought that like when he saw her fly, that would be like the moment.
Yeah. But
maybe it happens in the start of next book.
Save him.
Yeah, where like she comes back around, maybe.
It's when she saves their lives. He's probably so grateful. He's like, oh, I love you now.
Mm-hmm. That is kind of the tragic part, right? Because it's like we're seeing Selden become his own person, and we get like 3 chapters of that, and then he's like, "Wowee! I love dragons," and it's like that becomes his personality for forever.
Yeah.
Until like the end of Reyn Wilds, where we get actual person Selden again, but still.
Yeah, but that's like severely traumatized, tortured, so sad. Like Fitz era Selden, it's not good.
Okay, true. He goes through some awful stuff, but then he falls in love with and like that. Doesn't he like he marries the new queen of Chalced.
Trauma bonds with the Duchess of Chelsea.
Yeah.
Do they get married? I just thought that she like was like, you're staying here, and he was like, okay.
I think
even if they don't formalize their relationship, they were like
yeah.
Mm-hmm. They were in love.
They had hard eyes for each other for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of Chalced, oh sorry, do you have any more notes? My bad.
I was just gonna say, they in this chapter 35, there's like a council that Kefri is at where they're trying to figure out what to do with the satrap, and one of the traders was like, Let's just make him do work and then make him swim in the Rainwild River.
Yes, please.
That should have been his ending.
I
Like,
would not be mad.
I was so mad because then they were like, yeah, everyone like just ignored Trader Lorik's outburst, and I'm like, Trader Lorik is spitting.
Yeah.
Lorik had a good idea.
Trader Lorik's the only one who's thinking straight.
They're like, everyone else is like, hear me, politics. I'm like,
Kill
look,
him.
it doesn't matter. They're like hundreds of miles away. You can say that the satrap is doing whatever, and you can just like put him to work. Like, who cares?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he doesn't have to live like royalty. Especially if they were planning on like seceding anyways.
Yeah, like
Right.
like they control the narrative 100% as long as they control the satrap.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of the satrap, as I was saying earlier, and definitely not using a new, even better transition, it's chapter 36, Dragon and Satrap. I'm going to be real, I have no idea why this chapter is titled Dragon and Satrap, like they're on equal footing or equally represented in this chapter. It's all Tintaglia, and then the satrap, Cosgo, just steps in at the last like page and is like, huh, we are being flooded. Come with me, Malta. We have to... Or, well, come with me, little servant girl. But yeah, this chapter really isn't about the satrap at all. This is all Tintaglia and Malta.
This chapter was titled by the satrap himself. He's like, I'm in it, so this is what it's going to be called.
I'm basically as important and powerful as a dragon.
Yes, he definitely thinks that. No doubt in my mind, that is his
I
belief.
really wish we got a moment of like satrap doing a hest and trying to be like, dragon, respect the satrapy.
I would love him
would
to get
love that.
eaten.
I want it so bad that I might just like write it myself.
Yes, please. It
Right.
should be like it should be Murkor who eats him.
Yeah,
because he's the smartest one. He's
right.
like, I'm doing you a favor.
The right dragon to devour.
The satrap would want the golden one, obviously, because he would be the most majestic and beautiful one, and he's like made of gold. And Murkor's the smartest one, so it's kind of like, I know this guy's not good for humanity. I might as well just do what needs to be done for the good of all dragon and humankind.
He doesn't taste good, but you know,
Oh,
I'll take the bullet.
Yeah.
Like gross, like old sweat.
Yeah. And kind of slimy.
Mm-hmm.
He's genuinely, he's like, he doesn't get any sunlight. Bro does no exercise. He frail as all hell, no meat on them bones. And he also like just does drugs all the time. And it's like,
yeah, I was gonna say heavy drug user.
Mm-hmm. And not like, this guy is not like medicinal. He's just like, aren't like his teeth all fucked up because he uses like that's from him throwing up, but then it's also like even before that they're like he does so much herbs or whatever that like his eyes.
He said some of them were loose and stuff. Like, oh,
yeah.
I'm sure they're like brown and yucky.
He puts Regal to shame with his drug use.
There really are like elements of the Rainwilds where it's just like taking the most insane shit from like Farseer and then turning the up on that. Like Kennet and like all the villains like are the obvious ones, like Kennet and Cosgo, just so over the top. But yeah, so in this chapter, last chapter, Reyn basically tells Malta that Malta's like, yeah, the dragon left me alone after my accident, and Reyn is like, well, she's still tormenting me. I drink myself to sleep every night, and Malta is like, fuck that, fuck this. I need to like do, and she's basically, she's like run out of options. She doesn't know what else she can do, and now she's like, I'm gonna release the dragon, and maybe that's the one thing that can actually change her situation. So she follows Selden into the Undercity or whatever they call it. And it turns out that she's a little bit skill sensitive. And so with the help of Tintaglia, she drowns herself in the memories of the city and manages to figure out the process of how to rescue Tintaglia, and she manages to hold on to her identity just barely. But yeah, in the process of like turning the levers and stuff to like try and free Tintaglia, she accidentally causes another quake and cracks open she like cracks open something somewhere, and like the satrap's room starts flooding, and he's like, "Hey, I happen to be here." And it's like, "Satrap, why are you in the Undercity?" And it's like, "Worry not, we must escape now." And that's basically this entire chapter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how Malta isn't scared shitless. Like, she has the same way of thinking about it that Fitz had, where like neither one of them were that reactive to like the fact that they're surrounded by what seems to be a shit ton of ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just like, "Oh, I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing." And like Malta in particular too, like all her parts in this whole section made me feel so claustrophobic that I don't understand how she wasn't just losing her shit the entire time.
She is exactly like Fitz. Even she says something and I'm like, this is what Fitz thought. And like either said to us or thought. It was like, she's like, Malta was the unseen ghost here, not they. The city was theirs. I'm like, yes, that's exactly what Fitz said too. But like, I think they're just used to like weird shit happening, so they just accept that it is. Like Malta also is still recovering from a head injury. So like it definitely could still be her concussion and her just like going with it because her brain doesn't have enough energy to like think too hard about these things. But I don't have any excuse for Fitz.
And I think for Malta, at least
permanent head wounds.
Yeah.
For Malta, she had like forewarning because like Reyn was like, "Here is the deal with this place."
Yeah.
So even though it's like obviously like actually experiencing it is way different, she's like, "Oh, okay, this is what Reyn was talking about." Also, to what you were saying about it feeling super claustrophobic and how it is written, this really, I feel like we haven't had a lot of this in this series, but when we were doing Farseer, I was gushing about how like Robin Hobb is so good at like writing altered states of consciousness, whether it be like from weird elfbark drug use or like merging with Night Eyes with the wit. Yeah, like the wolf stuff. And this was just like another amazing example of that.
Yeah. This one was incredible. She's just so talented. It just boggles my mind.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like when I try to think of like how would I write this, I feel like she manages to do so much with so little because I'm like, I feel like I would overthink it and try to add way too much detail, but she's sort of like she like layers details on, but like just enough that you get the picture.
I was actually listening to a podcast episode where another author kind of was like interviewing her, and she said something like she doesn't use too much detail because she's like, if I say a mountain, everyone's going to think and picture a different mountain. So like all I have to say is there was a mountain there, and everyone automatically just kind of puts their own like personal mountain there, so that's what they expect. And so it makes sense why she would write not as detailed as she could to let us fill in the gaps.
Mm-hmm. And we've experienced that, right? Like even on this podcast, we've talked about like, oh, I visualize it like this, I visualize like this, and then we like, and it's like, it's the beautiful thing of like none of those visualizations are necessarily wrong because there aren't descriptions. It's just sort of like we all have our personal realm of the Elderlings visualized.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think that also obviously helps for like stuff like the weird age stuff with Birch and Shade, because by not having as much details, she can be like, yeah, you're totally right to visualize them as being ancient. Nope, I just kidding.
Just kidding. Birch is hot as fuck, and Shade's having kids in his like 70s. I was thinking about that today.
too, because he pulls.
I was
Big
thinking
time.
about that. I'm like, Shade is, when he dies, he's at least like 100. Like, he is dirt. Like, he is old as dirt. And he has, what, like a 17-year-old kid? Or a 20-year-old kid? Like, he has two young kids, which means he had them when he was 80. Like, I just can't. I don't think that's some math I want to do. I want to just keep that.
It's such a bummer that Shade's kids suck.
Yeah. But I mean, he kind of sucks sometimes too, so like it makes sense why.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
true.
remember anything about Shade's kids. Now I'm worried.
They suck big time. I
They
hate
both
them.
suck.
I hate
Wait,
them
An
both a lot.
awkward moment.
Wait, like
Yeah.
like suck forever type suck? Like what?
Yeah.
They suck for most of the time, yeah.
Oh no, are they like worse
They
than
do get
Malta?
better though.
Are they worse than Prime
Yeah.
Malta?
Well, we don't get their POV.
Yeah.
So it's not worse in that regard, but like one of them is Malta level, I would say.
Okay.
But she gets better. They both get better at the end because they both go through some shit too.
I don't
'Cause
remember.
in the last book, they get
I don't
better.
remember Shun getting better, but I remember Lant getting better.
She gets better because
Actually, you know what? If I had names like Shun and Land, I would be a problem child too.
Well, their name's Shine and Lantern.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Shun and
But
Lant.
she gets better after she like gets kidnapped with B.
Oh, right.
Like she ends up being better. She goes through a Malta change too, like Malta trauma.
Yeah, don't her and her brother fuck.
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
Yep, because
Yeah.
Shade doesn't tell them,
Awkward as
so they don't know. So then they
They
find
don't
out.
know what? What don't they know?
They don't know
that
their
they're brother and
siblings.
sister.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna be like Shade didn't give them the talk, and I'm like, huh?
They didn't know they're not allowed to do this.
Yeah, they don't know that they're brother and sister, and then they figure it out, and they're both like horrified.
Mortified.
Yeah, as they should
Oh.
be.
There's so much.
Remember that.
The last trilogy gets wild.
Yeah.
Good lord.
Okay, anyways, moving on from Shade's shitty.
Speaking of family,
Shade's supernatural skill virility. Anyways.
One of my favorite parts of this chapter was Malta describing the Cuprous emblem, and she describes it as it was a big chicken with a crown, looking as if it wanted to fight.
yeah.
It's so funny.
Honestly,
I love it. Everyone sees it differently too.
Mm-hmm. I pictured the rooster on top of your hat.
Wait, whose hat?
Your hat that you're
Oh
on.
yeah,
Your
yeah,
chicken
yeah,
hat.
yeah. Okay,
That's like
okay.
literally exactly what I pictured.
My chicken is a peaceful soul, but honestly, I
is
think
a crown, not a crowned rooster.
I almost feel like she sees it like looking as if it wants to fight because she has like she has like a better opinion of Reyn now. So she's like, yeah, their family crest looking a little less lame now.
Mm-hmm. It's spicier.
Okay, speaking of the Cupresses, they stupid as fuck. Like, yeah. Reyn is like, guys, you have to check on Malta. She is in the Rooster Crown chamber. Just go check on her. And they're like, it's okay, Reyn. Totally, we got you. And okay, there are extenuating circumstances. I get that. But like, listen to the words coming out of his mouth. He's not speaking gibberish. He's speaking full, complete sentences with a through line and like a lot. And they're just like, okay, drunk brother, get back to bed now.
It's not like drunk rambling. It's very concise. He's like, I will go to bed, but Malta is in the city. Please send someone for her.
Yeah, it's not like all over the place. He's just repeating the same thing again and again.
Right. And they just don't believe him at
all.
all.
So frustrating to me to see them just brush him off. I hated that. Because they could have helped Malta and like maybe the whole situation with her and the satrap could have not even happened if they would have just checked on her earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they realize it next chapter. And
yeah, but late then.
Yeah, I hate Bender's like, well, if only you hadn't been drunk, and it's like,
I hate him. Him and Kefria are like basically the same. They're both so freaking annoying.
Yeah, they are. I agree.
And then Tillamon is literally like Selden because she like gets forgotten about and she's only in there for like 1 second.
And then she finally finds love in Rainwilds.
Yeah, that's true. That is nice.
We talked about this when I was like first reading it, but Rainwild is really just like a thinly veiled like romance series with like fantasy elements.
Yeah.
Like change the setting to a high school and you have like the clique.
Yeah.
No, but like even the interchapter interludes are like a love story.
Love story.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite love story in Realm of the Elderlings.
I know. I thought it was so cute.
It's so cute.
My favorite is probably Elise and Leftrin, but it's hard to say.
Oh,
they are, I think, the best.
Mm.
That one's so sweet. I love that.
I think I missed this on my first read and I don't really know how I missed it, but we get like an explanation for why the sculpture garden in the mountains in Farseer exists, or like that garden of all the dragons. Because Tintaglia says, the Elderlings made living sculptures of my kin from the memory stone. Old men would carve them in this chamber, safe from the wind and weather. Then they would die into them, and these sculptures would emerge into the sunlight and fly over the city. They would live for a brief time, and then their memories and false life would fade. There was a graveyard of them back in the mountains. Elderlings thought of it as art. So I thought all those old dragons were like old Farseer monarchs, but they're not. They're like some obviously like King Wisdom or whatever is, but they're like elderlings, dead elderlings.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that like it feels like the way she describes it is like a conscious decision / like it's
like a cultural practice.
Right, but then we see like I wonder where like this skill urging to like go to the mountains, carve yourself into a dragon came from. I don't remember. Do they explain it more in like the last trilogy?
I don't think so.
I wonder if it's just like the elderling magic calling to people that have that blood in them. Like all the memory stone there.
Or like the previous Farseers
calling them
like before all the erosion and stuff could actually go and see the like stone garden area and like got inspired by them to create their own dragons, and then it just sort of became a thing.
Yeah, because like the way it's described in Farseer is it feels like that's just sort of a feature of the skill, that it's like an what do you call it, like an immutable thing that like if you have the skill, this is your end point. But it's definitely not that way for the Elderling, so it feels like it like became that way somehow along the way.
Yeah. Something that I just picked up on. Oh, sorry, what were you saying?
I was just gonna say, I just said we'll have to keep our eyes peeled when we're reading the last trilogy to see if we get an explanation.
Even Tawny Man to see too.
Mm-hmm.
Something I just like was brought my attention to, like when you were reading this, is it said their memories and false life would fade. Does that mean like the dragons use up all the memory and then the memories are gone? Or like do they go kind of into the skill river like once it's like a little bit of gasoline, like you put some, or like a little bit of electricity, you put a little bit into the dragon, and then it feeds more on the memories of the people. That's why it like sort of skills them, or like forges them a little bit when it flies over. And then once there's no people and the like core memories of the person inside are like spent, that's why they fade, and that's why they can't be reawoken, except for like a new dragon coming.
Well, in Farseer, it felt like it is sort of like they fed on like a mixture of skill and wit, which makes sense because of dragon stuff. Because the thing that initially awakens them is just like blood. Right? Like, yeah.
But maybe that's giving it the little bit of like new memory and new life.
Yeah.
To wake up.
Yeah, honestly, okay, actually, if you remember that from the Stone Garden, you can really quickly figure out what the life ships are. I didn't even we just read that and I didn't remember it when we were talking about life ship stuff, but yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. It functions in a similar way. Like the memory stone's almost like a mockery of the cocoon would.
Yeah.
It's interesting that they function the same, actually, despite being
different like mediums. I wonder how the memory stone comes to exist.
It's just, it feels like it's just sort of like
a natural part of
yeah, like it's they function the same because they're both skill touched almost. But like,
well, the dragons drink and swim in and need the like silver to live, and then the memory stones have like solid silver in it. So it's all about the silver.
That makes sense.
And there is the like actual skill, like the physical silver skill river. So we know that it happens and comes naturally in this world. And that just kind of is what ties them together. And that's why they have such similar like attributes and stuff.
Once again, I don't remember if they like elaborate on this in the last trilogy. Do we get to know the origin of silver, or like, or is it just always like it's just assumed to be a part of the setting kind of thing?
I believe it's just part of the setting. It's like in the earth, like water, because that one girl is like her job is going into the well and like mining for silver.
Yeah,
I forgot about that. I think we'll be able to pick up a lot more on our reread of Reyn&Malta, because that's where we get to see it in depth. And because we're like so focused in on stuff like this, I think that that's where we'll get to pull a lot of information from, because I don't think that Fitz really cares too much about it because it doesn't affect his like physical life until he gets splattered with it. But
let's be real, Fitz really cares about stuff that affects his physical life as well.
Yeah,
it's a lot to get him to care about anything.
That's true.
It's not good at like focusing on things that aren't what he immediately needs to focus on, and even then still it's touch and go.
It's the wolf in him, that's why.
Yep.
Have you guys seen that meme where it's like he got that dog in him, and it's like an x-ray picture of someone's lungs and they're just like little dogs there?
No.
Okay, wait, I need to send this, but like whenever whenever we talk about like Fitz having the wolf in him, I just think about that.
That's funny. I mean, that makes sense. That probably is the inside of Fitz's body. It's just lots of little wolves running around.
A bunch of dogs.
Yeah.
I think that this chapter is sort of the most like classical fantasy of the series in a way, and it really appeals to like the genre nerd in me. Like the whole like Malta binding Tintaglia with her true name or whatever, like that's such a fantasy thing. And I feel like despite being a fantasy series, Realm of the Elderlings feels like really low fantasy at times. I don't even know how to describe it, but like it feels like it doesn't like it's almost like not as melodramatic as traditional fantasy, where like I feel like there's like sweeping, arching things and overarching things. It's weird because like there's prophecies, there's all these things, but like I feel like the way that it's used in Realm of the Elderlings, if it tries to be grounded, and it doesn't like go all over the place. Well, this chapter there's a little bit of indulging in that. And there's also the part where like Malta's in the memories and she's talking and she's like, take control. She chose the moment and brought it to life around her. And like that's just really badass in a way that we kind of don't always get to have in Realm of the Elderlings. So I love that about this chapter.
I feel like the magic isn't super like all around and is this like huge magical thing. It's just like a part of everyday life for most of these people, or it's like a little taboo thing that you don't talk about, so it's not a huge deal for any of these characters. So it's not made out to be this huge thing to the readers either.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do we have any other notes for this chapter?
I don't.
Okay. Well, rolling straight into the next chapter, chapter 37, Death of the City. Oops, earthquakes. The satrap and Malta, and I guess Kiki is there too, find their way to the surface, but they're trapped on an island in the middle, or like a plateau in the middle of the Reyn&Malta River. And so they manage to scrounge up a boat, but they kind of don't have anywhere to go except up the river. Meanwhile, Bendir, Johnny, and Kefria are finally clued in as to what's going on, and Rain and Selden, Rain and Selden go down into this now shattered city to try and find Malta.
I love Malta and the satrap interacting because she just is constantly reading him for filth. And he deserves every second of it.
Yeah.
She's like, how is this motherfucker the supreme leader of the world? Like,
right.
Hello?
And I'm so glad that she sees him for what he is now. Like before she like ruined her whole reputation by sleeping with him to like get her father safe. She realizes that like he never was going to do that anyways.
Yeah, she calls him out on it because he's like, if you don't help me, I won't save your father. And she's like, you weren't going to anyways, and you couldn't, even if you wanted to. So she sees right through him.
Yeah, it's nice. It's a nice change. She replaced Cirilla in his life because Cirilla did and like says and acts the exact same way that Malta does when she's with the satrap.
The satrap even says like, stop acting like a companion, and it's like, and Malta's like, God forbid.
Yeah.
Like,
I remember on my first read making that connection, being like, oh, she's not afraid of him the way Cirilla wasn't afraid of him. And then I was like, but look what happened to Cirilla. So I was like afraid for Malta that he was going to do something like that to her too.
Yeah, fortunately, they're not on a ship with a bunch of other people the satrap has control over, so Malta can just tip him over into the river if things go badly.
Yeah.
I wish that happened. I wish he drank the river water instead of Keki.
Yeah.
I think she should have told him that it was totally fine and they should just go take a bath and like clean themselves up in the water. Like just one time, please.
Yeah, like one time taking a bath in the river probably wouldn't kill you. It would just give you sores like all over your body.
Yeah.
And see that just like Cirilla, it would make him more tractable when he's sick.
Yeah. Yes. Except he would be zero hope. He would literally be dead weight, and Malta would definitely contemplate tipping his ass over. And like, maybe it's not worth it.
Yeah. My favorite part of this chapter was definitely when she was like, "Kick me again, and you'll see lights with your eyes shut."
Yes.
She's almost as good with her insults as Kettle. Or her
Yeah.
threats.
Yeah.
I miss Kettle.
Me too. She was sassy.
Mm-hmm.
She wouldn't let half these people get away with the shit that they did. If she was like best friends with Ronica or something, Ronica would have turned out so differently. Althea would have had Vivacia the second that Ephraim died. Like, none of this would have happened. Bingtown would have already seceded. They would have been their own independent thing for like years. But no,
But I also feel like Kettle
dragon.
is too cryptic for her own good. She's like Amber. She's like the Amber role in this story.
Yeah.
Kettle would have bullied them all, though. She would have bullied them.
Okay, that's fair. She would have bullied them all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
Amber's like, let's be friends, and through the bond of friendship, I will manipulate you, but not really.
Mm-hmm.
And Kettle would have been like, do what I say or else.
Yep.
Except like in old woman voice instead of mobster voice, but yes.
Yeah. Except she would get some goons and she'd beat people up. Like, I could see it.
Yep. I could too.
She could be a crime boss.
Mm-hmm.
If she turned her ways to the dark side.
She could be like, do you either of you watch Peaky Blinders?
No,
I want to so bad.
I just started it. I'm only like a couple episodes into the first season, but like the main characters are all part of this like one family that's like basically a gang or whatever in Birmingham in the 20s, I think. And there's like a matriarch that's like the aunt of these characters, and she's just like a badass bitch, and she kind of reminds me of Kettle because she's mean to everybody and doesn't take their shit.
Sounds like Kettle.
Mm-hmm. Add
one more notch on AU fanfic settings we have come up with in this episode.
Yeah.
We've got the classic, the satrap dies in some horrible fashion AU. We have the Rainwild Chronicles high school AU.
Yes.
And now the Peaky Blinders Realm of the Elderlings crossover AU.
Bro, I would love that one. I think that one would be the best one. I would love to see Fitz in like the 20s.
Mm.
He would look so
Everybody has a really bad haircut in Peaky Blinders, though. Like Fitz
would fit in.
Fitz deserves a better haircut.
He just needs to wear a little hat every day and he'd be fine.
Yeah.
Except he would hate the clothes. He would hate it all.
Well, he hates everything he has to wear unless it's like month-old pants that he hasn't washed.
Yeah, and a cotton shirt.
Right.
He'll like begrudgingly admit that the clothes that the fool gives him are nice for like 1 second, and then he's like, "This isn't me." Ugh.
Yeah.
It doesn't scream mountain man who hasn't showered in 12 days, fool.
It doesn't reek of my body odor, so I don't like it.
And okay, this is how we should know that Fitz is hot, because he still manages to pull, even with this lack of fashion sense or like basic hygiene.
Or like basic bathing.
Yeah.
That's true.
He has not been in society for like 15 years. He immediately walks into town and Jinna's like, whoa-wee!
Yeah.
My only other note for this chapter was just Malta contemplating. She's thinking about how she's talking to Cosgo, and she's like, that was how her grandmother had always spoken to her. She understood why now. And it's like, point, but also Cosgo is like worse than even Prime Malta. So don't worry about it, Malta. You were never this bad.
Yeah.
Right.
I think my only note is like, I'm just in awe of the fact that Selden has grown up more in his like 2 days in Treehog than he did the entirety of Ship of Magic and this book combined. Like, it baffles me.
He has dialogue now.
He can think for himself. He doesn't cry and wail.
The change in Selden reminds me of those tweets where like people will make up things their kids say. Like that's what Selden's like character development reminds me of. It's like, what do you think about the Ukraine-Russia conflict? And it's like, mommy, I think that just like complex geopolitical analysis. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a little bit what it's like.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, the next chapter is our one respite from the ongoing struggle in the Rain Wilds. It's Paragon's captain. Can't even call him by name. So this is a chapter all about Brashen finally settling into a leadership role on Paragon, and the crew of the Paragon sort of thinking about their next moves as they are approaching like the Pirate Isles.
Okay,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Frodo tucked himself in. So I have to. It's so cute.
He did that himself?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
He was playing and being really annoying with the blanket. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, he's being still. So I peeked around to look at him and he tucked himself in.
So cute.
So cute. Okay, sorry.
You know what? Actually, this segues into my first note really well, where it's like, it's all about Amber saying, in my opinion, men deny animals have thoughts and feelings for one basic reason, so they won't feel guilty about what they do to them. And it's like, yeah, show your animal some love. And I think that this applies a lot, like basically everything Amber says, it applies across across time and space, where it applies a lot to what the Cooperses did to the dragons, where they refused to think of them as intelligent beings and brought about the entire catastrophe that's happening to them right now, and more. And in the future, in the past, we see a similar thing with the oppression of the witted folk, right?
Mm-hmm.
The old blood, where they just don't respect the essentially autonomy of animals. But yeah, just like be nice to them, folks. That's all.
Yeah.
Also, if you haven't watched the new Jordan Peele movie Nope, this is a pretty there's like a pretty similar theme in that, so that reminded me a lot of that.
I'll have to look at that one.
Mm-hmm.
There's a part where Paragon and Amber are talking, and Paragon's trying to tell Amber that there's like multiple dragons inside him, because he's like, there's two me's. And Amber's like, sometimes I feel like there's another me too. Like, she thinks he's being metaphorical. And he's like, no, they're both me. But they're different me's. And she, like, says that she has that too. And he asks her, who is your other me? And she says, oh, well, a friend I had. We used to talk a lot. Sometimes I still hear myself talking to him, and I know how he would answer. And I was like, it's Fitz.
Oh, yeah.
And there's like another like big hint earlier, right? Where like Lavoy is like, you'd have to be a fool to think that, and she's like,
yep. She
yeah, I've
says,
been called a fool a bunch.
Yes.
first time I've been called a fool, and likely not the last.
Yes.
Yep.
I did like that. Speaking of Paragon and his multiple selves, I think that him realizing and understanding where all of the like conflict of self comes from within himself, and the fact that there are so many different beings in him helps him so much become his own being, because he realizes all of the different parts inside himself, like both of the dragons, Kenneth's childhood self, and all of the people who died aboard him, like, don't make up him. Like, he used to think that he was just all of those people, and he just like was what they were. And I think now he's realizing that he can become more than that, and that he's more than, like, I think he says to Amber, like, I can be more than you, like, I can be different than you guys want me to be, but I can also be different than like what I thought I was. So like he can be different than the dragons want him to be, or like all of the parts inside himself are. Like, he can choose to become someone new.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the first time that he's like realizing he's got that freedom too.
Mm-hmm. I just wish he would stop with the fucking "I could kill you if I wanted to." Like, Paragon, this is like the third time this week you've acted as though you're gonna kill me. We know you aren't.
Yeah.
Like, cut the act.
And we also know that you could. Like, it's not brand new.
It's something that all of, like, that Brashen thinks about on a daily basis.
Yeah,
Right.
I feel like the first time he does it, it's like scary and threatening, and now he's just like a kid wanting attention.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I think that is the child part of him,
Mhm.
like, who thinks about lashing out like that.
Speaking of Paragon, is this like the first time we hear about his 7-pointed star?
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
it's described like in the last book.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like it's okay. It's the first time since we learned that it was Egrot's symbol from like Kenneth's section.
Yeah.
So that's like that's a big, like, that's basically like another instance of them giving the game away, where they're like,
Mhm.
here's the connection.
Yeah.
Okay, but enough about these other characters. For the titular character, it really is incredibly cool to see Brashen sort of tread the line of being commanding while also being respectful of everyone. And while it is sad to see that, like, the line of professionalism he has to draw with Althea, it's like Althea said, there's still that like pride in how much he's grown into himself.
Mm-hmm.
I think, especially from where he started this book at, it's such a huge transformation. I love that for him.
Yep.
Yeah, I marked down 2 quotes from that section. And it's Althea, like, looking at Brashen, and she's like, she suddenly looked at him with new eyes. He had it. Whatever that the indefinable quality was that made a man capable of captaining a ship, Brashen had it. And then she's like, she felt a pang of loss that the line must separate herself as well. But the surge of pride she felt in him overwhelmed any selfish regrets. This was what her father had seen in him. Brashen had satisfied all of Ephraim Vestrit's belief. And I was like, oh, that's so freaking sweet. And the fact that she's admitting that, like, she doesn't want that line to separate the two of them, like, she likes him and she knows she likes him, and she's starting to admit it, even to herself.
They kissed,
Yeah.
like last time we had a chapter with the both of them. They kissed. They know
Yes,
it.
but like, she could have just talked that off as being like physical, like, oh, I'm just attracted. But
Yeah.
this is like, she
She
feels
respects
for
him.
the like friendship and relationship that they had. She
Yeah.
like doesn't want the line to separate them that way, but she likes him. She likes him, and she's telling herself she likes him now. And I'm not mad about it. That's Althea's real growth, admitting that she likes a man.
Mhm.
I think, okay, and another thing is, I think in the realization that Brashen has what it takes to captain a ship, it's another step in realizing that like she doesn't have that yet, I think.
Yeah.
And but she does, like, she eventually definitely gets it, but I think that lots of Altia's growth is like sort of realizing that the person she was at the start of the series was not ready to be the person who could captain Vivacia, and she's grows into that person by the time that she actually gets command of a live ship.
Yeah, definitely.
Which, like, again, like, it makes sense for Brashen to grow into that role earlier because he was like the first mate on the ship for so long. And Altia's having to like learn lessons about leadership along the way. But yeah. My last note for this chapter was just Amber is talking about Paragon and says he's like a boy in adolescence. He has decided that nothing is the way he believed it to be and is reconstructing his whole vision of the world. Which I feel like it applies to Paragon, and there's an interesting parallel there with Kenneth, of course, and how he changes his whole view of the world to be about control, and he becomes very cynical and like paranoid. But I also feel like this just applies to almost every character in the series and their growth, where it's like we just saw Malta completely change her worldview, and we know Winfro has his complete crisis of faith throughout the first book and this one. Althea has to go through a similar thing. Like the entire series is like predicated on people like having their view of themselves and the world shattered and then having to piece it back together.
Well, I think this is happening with Kenneth right now again. Like he had that happen to him when he lost his leg, and now the threat of like losing Wintro too, I think that does it to him also.
Mm-hmm.
Except Kenneth never grows to be a good person, which
No.
He grew away from being a good person and he never grew back.
Yeah. That's because he didn't have Paragon to give it back to him.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if he was too far gone, though. Like, if Paragon gave him his memories and whatever back, like, I don't know how much it would have changed him.
I think now...
I think he would have tried to kill himself. Like, not to get too dark, but I think that, like...
I kind of think that, too.
Yeah, like, he would finally realize, like... He would have to... he couldn't live with the weight of what he'd done, I think, at that point.
Mm-hmm. Or he just wouldn't be able to live with the memories of what happened to him. Mm-hmm. And, like, the feelings associated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they all come back fresh. Like, when Fitz gets his back, it's like he's, like, feeling them for the first time and, like, they're brand new. So
Fitz is able to deal with them because he actually has grown throughout that series, while Kenneth has regressed, if anything.
Yeah.
Right.
He still doesn't have the tools to actually deal with his trauma.
Nope.
Well, and I think half the tools of, like, being strong enough to go through your trauma and deal with it is, like, having that community. Like, Fitz has so many people around him that love him and care about him and are there for him whenever he needs. And, like, Kenneth refuses to allow anybody in. Like, even Vivacia doesn't know the, like, soul and heart of Kenneth.
Because to be fair, until Fitz gets his memories back, he doesn't really... He's still like a recluse from society until he gets his memories back, and he's like, oh shit, this whole like isolating myself thing is pretty cringe. I'm gonna go back and talk to my mom.
Both Kenneth and Fitz share the like denial about the way people feel about them. Like they both don't think that anyone genuinely cares about like their well-being. Mm-hmm. And Fitz is just sad boy about it, and Kenneth doesn't care. Mm-hmm. But they both believe that, when in reality they're surrounded by people that like love them.
Mm-hmm. And even when Fitz is in his recluse stage, like he still has Night Eyes for sure. And the Fool comes to visit, and like he's got Hap and Starling. So like he's never 100% ever alone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He's got a child to care for. He's got a wolf to care for him, and he's getting laid. Like, you know, everything's going great.
What more does he need in his life?
Yeah. Also, like, this talk about drawing comparisons between Kenneth and Fitz reminded me of this Reddit post I saw, and I can't tell if it's genius or just coincidence, but like they were talking about how Kenneth's name sounds really similar to Fitz's like original name Kepit, and was wondering if that was like an intentional thing, to like draw parallel or like draw comparisons between them. And I was like,
I
perhaps.
think there's a striking amount of comparisons. Like, I know we talked about it a lot in, I think it was in Ship of Magic, but there's a lot of similarities. They just went on different paths with like the way they reacted to their traumas. Like, Kenneth became an evil genius, and Fitz is like trying to help people. But they have so many similarities.
For sure. He really is sort of reductively the evil Fitz, but
Yes.
yeah. Especially with like the whole theme of destiny, that it's almost like an inversion of the stuff that's played straight in the first series, with like you've got the promised prince who's destined to save the world, but they like mess around with that a little bit in the first series, but like it's really flipped on its head here. Anyways, enough about Kennedy. He isn't even in this fucking section of the book. Giving him too much screen time. So
Watch out,
chapter
I wonder if Julia still loves him, or when
God.
When that glass will shatter.
Mm-hmm. I don't. Has she finished the book?
I don't think so.
I don't think. Okay. Well, we'll find out soon, TM, when we do the not so live show. Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to hold my disdain for him in. Like, I'm not sure how quiet I can be about
but I
it.
have like a big thing to drink, so that every time I'm gonna make a face, I can take a drink.
I have to have a mug that will cover my whole face.
My entire whole face.
Okay.
Yeah. We should just put up masks. We should draw a little face on some paper and just like hold it up. Like, I can't say anything because I don't want to spoil it.
But then I feel like that's a spoiler in and of itself.
Yeah, that's true.
Turning our cameras off is too, but it's safe.
I mean, that's why you don't turn. That's why you have the drink. So you have to have like normal
I have
drinks.
To get up and walk away. Like, face will show it all. Even when I'm done with my drink, I'll be like trying to put it down. Like, it's not gonna go well. I have a lot of hatred for a lot of things.
Lean out of frame.
Yeah. Oh, what's that? What? Huh? Somebody's talking to me over here? I'll drag my cats. I'll just hold them in front of my face so that they can be the spoil-free thing. It's gonna be rough. I really don't know that Julia's gonna come to hate Kenneth until everything gets wild in Ship of Destiny. And I'm dreading that moment. Dreading like the lead up until that moment.
I don't know. I feel like he does like some really fucked up shit the last few chapters, right?
Did she get to the part where he is like hatching his evil plan to like make a baby with Kenneth and Etta? Yes. Or I mean with Wintro and Etta?
Yeah, I think she's past that.
No, I think that happens like right after where she was praising him. Hopefully. Please.
Okay. She got past
she got to the island part where she stows away Kyle.
She also got past the part where Greg like shows his true low-key misogynistic colors.
Wait, no, that means she must have gotten past the part where Kenneth's hatching his plan. No!
Yeah. You had hope. I do not.
Okay. This is gonna be a contentious live show. But anyways, before that, we have one last chapter.
Technically, too.
The epilogue exists. Fair.
And it is titled Chapter 40, so it's kind of confusing.
Okay, so the last chapter of the book,
Second to last.
Second to last, not counting the epilogue, is chapter 39, Dragon Rising. The events of this chapter are pretty simple. Reyn has resigned to his fate of dying and is like, cool, we're just all going to drown in the muck. And it's like, well, might as well die trying to free Tintaglia. And in a last-ditch effort, gets sunlight onto the cocoon. And Tintaglia finally morphs into a true full dragon and flies out and is like, cool, I can save my species. And then has a little moment of guilt and is like, fine, I'll go save the humans.
I'm just kind of surprised she didn't think of vengeance first. Like, instead of saving Reyn and stuff, she didn't think to, like, burn down Treehog because they kept her in the cocoon for so long.
Yeah, I would agree. Or, like, for her brethren that got turned into ships.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think the only reason that she didn't is because it would have been inconvenient for the plot.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably, yeah. But I mean, even if she did it then, everyone was, like, working on saving the, like, city. So they wouldn't have even been in Treehog really to begin with. So if she destroyed the city, she just destroyed, like, the places that they lived. She didn't even destroy the people there.
Right.
There are still some people in the city, though. It's not like the entire city.
The elder and children, yeah.
Right.
Anyone, I think it said, like, anyone who can help has to help. And, like, Kefria even goes to help. But I think she does that because Malta's in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Kefria would go help unless it directly affected her.
Yeah. She'd be like that.
I know that we've known that the cocoons, like, have the memories in them. I sort of still remembered the dragons just, like, hatching out from them, right? But instead it's like the cocoons just sort of melt into the dragons inside them, which I thought was a really interesting, like, different way of describing the process.
Yeah.
Where it's like the cocoons are literally part of them and not just like a holding vessel.
Yeah. I thought it was so interesting, and how much detail was in it. I loved it. And it did remind me a little bit of like a butterfly or like a moth coming out of the cocoon, with like it takes a second for their wings to really like fully come out and like be the size that they're supposed to be, because they come out real shriveled and looking like ridiculous on their big fat bodies. So it was kind of funny that like happened to Tintaglia too, and it like took a second for her wings to actually come out.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, I'm surprised that she didn't want to kill Selden and Reyn for being the only people to see her like feeble and weak.
Yeah. I think she was just riding a high of being free that she like didn't care in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then Selden when she comes back to save them, Selden sings her praise so much she's like enamored by him. She's like, "Yes, I'll keep you, my pet."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't really have anything to say. This chapter sort of just spoke for itself.
Yeah. I didn't have any notes for this chapter.
Mm-hmm. Well, once again, continuing the trend of the chapters in which the most important shit happens, we have nothing to say.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the epilogue, chapter 40, The Memory of Wings. And you guessed it, we're back to the serpents. We get more musings from Caesarea and everyone about like why are we not able to go back? And it's like the memories have been stolen. Time has passed. Uh-oh. We're running out of time. Then we get a cut to She Who Remembers, who is following Vivacia and hoping to reunite with the serpents and lead them to the Rain Wilds and where they need to cocoon. I thought that for me, the notable part of this epilogue was the section with She Who Remembers. I kind of felt like the other serpents were just sort of like retreading ground they'd already talked about. We never gotten to see a She Who Remembers point of view. And it was interesting because it's such a distinct personality from the other serpents in that there's obviously like a lot of trauma there where it's like he's talking about she wished she could kill them over and over again endlessly and forever take satisfaction in the act, talking about like yeah, even as she desired it, she recognized it as yet another of the deformities they'd inflicted on her. So, but she's also like deeply curious. Despite she has like this huge destiny on her shoulder, but she's also like, these humans are neat. I want to follow and learn about them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, my immediate thought was, I think Cyrilla and her would get along a lot. They both, I feel like the way they talk about stuff in this, like, intriguing. I need to study this more, or like, this bears further investigation. It reminded me of that kind of characterization.
Speaking of the others, I feel like Clarice had to make them. Like, it was the people from Clarice being around the dragons that created the others. Because they're the only ones that I feel like are super evil and have this, like, overarching malicious intent for everything in the world that could seep into dragons to make them like that.
We don't ever get like a description of how the others come about other than like it's just sort of humans influence on dragons. So that makes a lot of sense.
Especially if Clarice like knew about the dragons and everything and were actively trying to like get rid of them. And I think in the last trilogy, like Dwalia and stuff talks about the others, or like they have conversations with them or something like that. So they are like almost in league together.
Well, that's just that island's like a hatching ground. So maybe the people from Clarice were like spending a bunch of time there trying to get dragon eggs to hatch that would be like on their side. And then what hatched instead, because of all that exposure to them, was the abominations.
Yeah.
Or maybe they even like intended the abominations to hatch, right? Because
the
abominations sort of self-enforced, kept the dragons from coming back for thousands of years.
Right.
And because they have so many different white prophets, or like people dreaming true and all of that stuff, like they could see a future where this would be beneficial for them. And that's why they like went to the island in the first place, probably.
And every time I think about Clarice, it makes me think about like the meme of like who would win, an institution who has existed for thousands of years and has the ability to manipulate time itself, or one dog boy and blind man.
Oh my God. It's really B who like does it all. She like becomes the catalyst and stuff, she says. So
yeah, like a little
one 10-year-old child.
Yeah.
Who's the size of a 6-year-old?
It sounds like a I don't know why, but it reminds me of like an adoption thing for a dog or something, where it's like age 10, but is as friendly as like 6 years old. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Still acts like a puppy.
Mm-hmm. Really friendly for its size. But yeah, I think with that, that's the end of this book. Crazy to think about. I think that like Ship of Destiny, I remember the least about. I've talked about this before. I just remember everything going down at the end, but there's so many things that I sort of felt like happened towards the latter half of this book, which hasn't happened yet. And so I'm like, oh, I guess there's actually things that happen at the start of Ship of Destiny. So looking forward to that. And as we discussed earlier, really looking forward to discussing this with Jared and Julia, because so much goes down in the latter half of this book that I'd love to pick their brains about. So keep an eye out for that.
And Jared has not started
Ship of Destiny
yet, has he?
Nope. Honestly, I'm probably gonna ask him to like
wait.
Hold on.
Oh yeah, no, I was gonna say reread Mad Ship because he finished it like a month ago. So
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Just to like or the refresher.
I feel like they both.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Alex.
I just feel like they both are going to want to talk about all of the things that we had nothing to say about because like it's not important to us because we know what all happens and we're going to want to talk about some stupid little things. They're going to be like, the dragons, like how were they connected to everything? And we're going to be like, so like what do you think about Amber? What's up with Paragon's face? And they're going to be like, oh, what are you talking about? Like, let's talk about something serious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like She Who Remembers, and it's like, okay, yeah, but what about Brashen and Althea, though? Where do you think that's going?
Yeah.
I feel like Jared could get by without rereading Mad Ship because Robin Hobb is the queen of like putting so much refresher shit in her books
so that he remembers stuff to discuss in the live show. That's all.
Oh, gotcha.
I feel like he had a ton to say before, and I don't think he had read, like, I don't think he'd finished Ship of Magic really close to the time of recording, right?
Fair. Okay, you know what? I will. Fine. I'll trust in my friend's ability to remember.
Just because you can't remember what happened doesn't mean.
Oh my god, it's been flipped on me. Okay.
I forget everything immediately as soon as I'm done reading it.
I remember only the things that I think are important, and then everything else goes out the window.
Yeah, like
I tend to think that I remember books a lot, and that makes me not want to reread them. But doing this podcast has led me to realize I don't remember as much as I think I remember.
Same.
It's been like a while since I read the thing before we record. I have to go back and reread all the notes I put in to like remind myself what happened.
I feel about all of this stuff.
Right.
Okay, anyways, this episode has been on the verge of ending for like 5 minutes. I'm going to end it formally. Bye.